is this settling down into the cavity or the meltwater valley. So it's quite huge, its pressure. Did they cover the floor with concrete? Did they seal it up against radiation, or is it the preparation for a new foundation? They just poured concrete over the floor and in the fissures. Is this aquarium originating from 9/11, or is it 10,000 years old? Here you see the reflection of the new building 7 in the pool. And why were the hotspots discovered also in the glacier valley? Here you have an infrared image, and this is the US Post Office. This has a typical shape. And here you have this glacier valley, or these potholes. When you make the overlay, exactly the position where the infrared images show thermal activity. Here we have a three-dimensional map of the situation. We have here the South Tower, the North Tower, and Building 7. And this is the hot glacier valley from Larry Silverstein. And why do the hot spots of this valley fit on a circular area? So you have the South Tower with enormous energy input, the North Tower with the thermal input a bit smaller, and Building 7. We also observed 3 seismic shock waves today. 3 towers were destroyed. The first shock wave is the first collapse of the North Tower, of the South Tower, sorry. The second collapse is the North Tower, and there is another spike at 11:15, which is called further collapse. But let us assume that a certain process was going on in the Earth. We had 3 spikes that day, and we had 3 towers destroyed, where Building 7, the 3rd tower, was reported to have fallen down hours before it actually did. So my interpretation is that the 3rd spike at 11:15, when nothing happened, maybe correlates with Building 7's planned destruction. And of course, why stay the ground hot for 3 months? These are several thermal images. The hottest spot was, by the way, at Building 7, directly at this part. So you have Building the South Tower, the North Tower, and Building 7, South, North, 7. Conclusion. We are fighting against each other. So the professor in France didn't agree with me. He said, most likely it is geological. However, he did send his calculations with the enormous energy input. So we are fighting against each other because we focus on different fragments of the energetic riddle. The fragments of information are still in disorder, distorted or incomplete. They make no sense. We don't know finally which of these energy sources caused the total destruction. Richard Gage, up to now, says it was just explosive and incendiaries, and all sort of electromagnetic weapons or exotic weaponry are out of order. Radiation weapons. For me, working on this chapter was fairly unpleasant. I never wanted to waste my time or positive lifetime energy of thinking how the nuclear device actually worked. I wanted to limit my description on the effects in the ground, how the building responded to the energy released. But I was running in a standard problem. People started to argue a nuke couldn't have done this, or a classical nuke couldn't have done that. The refrain was always the same: the bomb explained me the bomb, or it was a high-tech nuclear device of unknown physical design, or no nuke at all. The way out of this is to define a black box. We still don't know how the nuke worked, but we can say what it did. So, for a time, we thought it was a nuclear fission only, a process which is under control since 1955, and the nuclear fission and fusion can be done since 1952. I thought, still last year, that we had a 3rd generation nuclear weapon which mainly uses strong neutron reflectors and radiation converters, so that the energy from the nuclear bomb can be converted into X-ray and directed a bit. So you remember the umbrella blast when the shock wave was reflected upwards, so not a spherical distribution but a shot right through the towers. And some people say, no, forget about the existing nuclear weapons. It was certainly a fourth generation nuclear weapon which exists in the laboratory only, a laser-induced fusion or antimatter which they did at CERN, etc. So let us first make the black box design. If an additional radiation weapon was present, what would we observe? If the sphere, that one, of effective radiation would come close to the surface, we would observe the outbreak of radiation phenomena. Keep in mind now that the bathtub was built, that the twin towers were built inside the bathtub, which is the protective basin against groundwater. So the outbreak of this radiation sphere would happen sooner because there is no solid rock and the radiation can escape easily. Also keep in mind that the elevator shafts form a radiation channel in this case because they are nearer to the nuclear device or the radiation device, so we have a double cone. We have a wider cone which would be observed by airplanes or helicopters or persons very nearby of buildings inflaming, and we have a central cone which basically would be able to melt the tower up. So inflaming building, yes, but this is a picture after the blast. So it makes sense if for a classical nuclear weapon this goes off and the radiation angle is present, that we had these burning buildings as we observed. But we have to look for camera fails before the blast if you talk about some strange nuclear weapon which was activated before the main blast. And with this in mind, I went through the video information, the video material I had, and found some interesting field effects, energetic field effects. We have first a camera failure shortly before the plane impacted. We have hypoderm burns, the boiled potato jack effect. This is a very nasty effect of a neutron bomb or a radiation bomb. Just you are being cooked, the first 2 millimeters of your skin are being cooked, and the skin will come off like a cloth jacket. So William Rodriguez saved a person who had exactly these hypoderm burns effects. You will also see silver fishes. So camera fails in the chopper cameras, in the helicopter cameras, which are in the region where this energetic cone is present. You will have camera fails near the south tower, near the towers when you are close enough, inflaming cars, and when you are in the central cone, outflowing material. I just played this timeline of registered field effects 1 hour during the event. Just camera failure, the first flash.
How was that?
Sound like a plane crash.
They think it was two, like, suicide bombers? Go ahead.
This is another helicopter. fail now. Yeah. Alright, see it? This is 15 minutes before the first explosion, before the first collapse. This van is going to inflame in a few seconds. So the white one is going to inflame now. Yet. Right, and both towers are still standing. This is the Marriott Hotel. So this is the outflow of material of molten steel running in inner coating. Yes, in a large segment. So this is a waterfall of steel pouring out of the building. And the next clip shows the destruction. All this side will be yellow. See that? Okay. Now, these radiation field phenomena are very interesting, and I've made a detailed analysis for my own. This is the video we have just seen, opened in a video editing tool, and you have well, here this picture where the lady is talking all the time, and unfortunately the micro was open all the time. So you see here in the sound channel it is always busy. The micro just records the sound of the rotor blades. Thanks God, I mean, there's a second chopper who had the micro closed all the time. And thanks to the fact that the micro was closed all the time, the micro in this chopper also worked as an electromagnetic interference signal receptor. So would this chopper have the micro down, you wouldn't have here all the time the sound signal. But with the micro off, the micro, or the electronics inside, not a micro, did capture these interference signals, and after a time it became clear to me that there is a sort of response because we have these double peaks. So we have here an event and we have an answer. You have the event and an answer. You have the end and answer, so we can. Alright, so there's something alive in the rock. I couldn't tell, or I can't tell, if it's because the nuke of the south tower, or the radiation weapon of the south tower and the north tower corresponding with each other, talking to each other, or if it is the process itself which responds to the signal. But I left this question open. I just noticed that we have a chopper where the silver fissures, the interaction with the camera, are quite convincing, but the sound interference was not registered. And the other chopper who has a very valuable input, playing with numbers and earning public ridicule. So the radiation theory seems to be really far-fetched. Nonetheless, when digging into the subject, you quickly find out that even asking simple questions is tabooed. You may ask why the North Tower trembled 12 seconds before collapsing. You will always run into troubles by raising the questions and by trying to find the answer. The questions the media never asked is to what height rose the North Tower's fountain, which we did see. And how much time is needed for the upshooting material to hit the ground again? What speed had the upshooting material at the exit point? What size had the possible eruption channel? And what quantity of gaseous material had been ejected? These simple questions must not be asked, and who asks them will be attacked and ridiculed. So it's simple physics to ask an object who falls from 300 meters, needs a time from approximately 8 seconds to hit the floor. So if you are on the ground and if you're throwing a stone upwards, it will at least need 8.5 seconds to go to the peak and 8.5 seconds to go down again. And the speed the object has to have on the ground at the exit must be at least 300 kilometers per hour or 83 meters per second. Due to friction and other obstacles, air friction, material friction, we will find out, can clearly show that the actual speed with which the material was rising was not 83 meters, but 200 meters per second. So we're just playing with numbers. Or we can ask if the building was opened up at 350 meters and the exit channel has a size of 10 times 10 meters, a simple calculation, then we have 35,000 cubic meters, and this corresponds to a sphere in the rock with a radius of 20 meters. This is elementary mathematics, it's very easy. So the nuclear charge must be 20 meters away, or the nuclear explosion and the gaseous sphere which was formed was 20 meters on top away. Now, in Wikipedia, you just Google underground nuclear weapons testing. You have a formula, a magic calculation trick, which relates the radius of the sphere to a certain yield of a nuclear weapon. You take these 20 meters, which you have got from the acoustic relation, and you come to a detonation power of 125 kiloton. So the professor in France calculated to the energy input in the ground 80 kiloton. The calculation based on the acoustic level is 125 kiloton. During my first presentation, I said, the maximum limit would be 10 kilotons, which is a medium-sized nuclear weapon, but 125 is huge. A man who has just said, 10 years ago, that a 150 kiloton nuke was used was Dmitry Khalesov, website thology.com. He describes himself as an insider, and he states that a 150 kiloton yield weapon has been used per tower. He published his findings, his statements, and was ridiculed because the question is, the hole he proposed was too big. This is the 20 meters, so the 40 meters in diameter. Where's the crater? This is the result of a 100 kiloton yield nuclear weapon, 100 meter deep, 300 meter or 400 meters wide. We didn't have it on the WTC site. And nonetheless, exactly this nuclear explosion is used by architects and engineers for comparison. So, here we have the Sedan nuke with 100 kiloton. Here we have the photograph of the North Tower erupting into the fountain. Because they use it, because impulse, momentum and energetic characteristics fit. But this explosion is just called a known explosion, not a nuclear explosion.
Again, none of these explosions are a part of the official story. Now, compare these explosions
That's the sedan one.
to a known explosion on the left here. Outward arching streamers, pyroclastic volumes of dust, symmetrical display like a mushroom. Does it look like a gravitational collapse to you?
All right, and here we have the architect's and engineer's problem. The nuclear weapon, which fits so well, is a known explosion. Richard Gage is ridiculed, but now from both sides. He's criticized by people close to the government because he proposes explosives, and is criticized from circles who say, well, the energy is much too high to be achieved with chemical explosives. So impulse and energetic characters are recognized correctly. The logical conclusion is negated. Another person in this club or in this circle is Dr. Judy Wood, who also was ridiculed because she says that the Twin Towers were destroyed by direct energy weapons unknown to the public, which justified the towers. She refutes the nuclear hypothesis by using photos, because the inner structure of the South Tower is still recognizable, and one could enter the South Tower's core directly through the eruption shaft. However, down there it was as hot as in a foundry, but some remaining structures were still visible, which would be impossible for a medium-sized nuke already. That's why I concentrated myself last time to a very small nuke underground, which dampened a bit the effects. But these photos from Dr. Judy Wood are poison for the nuclear theory. And she refutes the hypothesis of explosives inside the tower because we had no classical explosives practically capable of inflaming cars or setting an entire building on fire which is next to it. At that time, in 2017, another professor from Sweden mailed me. This professor has lost his job. He is ridiculed, shunned, and lives rather like a monk. He has become bitter, but he helped me very much in explaining the behavior of a nuclear plasma inside the towers. Unfortunately, we disagreed seriously on the subject because he was convinced that only a 0.3 kiloton fourth generation nuclear weapon was used. So Silverstein value for him is absolutely naturally. The rock bed, well, I cannot understand why the rock bed could absorb so much energy if so little yield was available. But his statement was, this weapon could fire a nuclear plasma jet out of the Earth and be effective for several seconds, because that's what the Chopper 2 EMP signal shows for the North Tower. And again, I had a huge problem in understanding what kind of nuke was used if the entire process takes 10 seconds to evolve. This is too long for a classical nuke, which evaporates in a microsecond. So he wanted to help me out with the fairly theoretical work of Andrei Spona, an expert in nuclear weapons and its developments, but I wasn't convinced, and we disagreed, unfortunately. But Chopper 2's EMP signal. So it starts. This is the North Tower, the South Tower is already down. Suddenly the camera goes wild completely. Silverfishes do appear, then it stabilizes again. And we have another interference whatsoever. And then the North Tower comes down. And the pilot is silent all the way until, well, he starts to speak now. Here's the spire standing from the north tower, from the shot nearby. Here's the central mushroom cloud, the black of the evaporated core. And here's the pyroclastic dust flow, which covered a few miles in Manhattan.
Yes, I am, Michael. We just saw that as well. The second tower, the only one that was standing, tower number 1, just we saw some kind of explosion, a lot of smoke come out of the top of the tower. And
all right. But now the interesting thing. When we analyze this video clip in a tube, we see not only 2 events, but even 4. We have here the first long-lasting interference. I'm just playing this. Okay, so this peak responds to some very energetic event somewhere, and it lasts 6 seconds. Then comes an absolute calm moment where the picture stabilizes and the interference disappears completely, and then we have curiously 2 small peaks following. So that one, and I can't stress this enough, this is the fingerprint of the villain. So this is the fingerprint of the nuke and the fingerprint of what was going on in the towers. And if the micro would have been on, this noise of the rotor blade would have overwritten this interference signal, and we wouldn't have found this because the interpretation is quite simple. Here is the explosion of the nuke. Then the nuke is contained in the Earth, where you have no signal. At this small point, the nuclear plasma breaks through the Earth. Here it hits the tower's top. So these 2 points are the speed of the nuclear plasma inside the towers. This is exactly 2 seconds. If you have a height of 400 meters, we have 200 meters per second for the plasma's speed, which perfectly correlates with what we would expect. Alright, at this point, thanks to Sweden. So, a long-lasting nuclear 0.3 kiloton plasma weapon. Does the military have such weapons? We don't know. But the observed fact is just a strong and long-lasting radiation source was present. And it's indeed a strange weapon, and it's no surprise that we have a headache and that we are trying to figure out already nearly 20 years what was going on. We had radiation phenomena up to 1 hour prior to collapse. We had an extreme energy input in the ground 3 months active. We find no crater. We find only a seismic activity, a small seismic activity, a small rumble in the ground, nothing more. And the weapon, worst of all, survives for a prolonged period of time. We don't know of any weapon which is capable of surviving for a prolonged period of time and producing so much energy output. We have no lethal radioactive radiation on place. We have survivors in the North Tower at this level, approximately. We had a pyroclastic flow of hot dust after collapse, several miles wide. We have no cavity below the towers as should be predicted or as should be expected, but we have a confirmed gas flow from below, so gases were shooting up, but there seems to be no origin. We have the dustification of iron and concrete where the paper remains intact. We have molten steel coming out of the building. And we have sudden inflammation of cars and buildings nearby. This is really, as people more and more state, a futuristic design, super weapon, or can it be old technology? And again, nature. Nature, you explain it all. During my 9/11 research, I literally stumbled across the feature that nature itself can form a nuclear reactor. Not only in the sun, which is a natural fusion reactor, but also on Earth, where under certain conditions the uranium ore starts to behave like a controlled and regulated nuclear fission reactor. In short, fission and fusion reactions can occur in a natural environment without the need of a complex control system. It just works all by itself.
1993. World Trade Center bombing, remember? During the trial, one of the bombers claimed the CIA had advanced knowledge. The diplomat who issued the terrorist visa was CIA. It's not unthinkable they paved the way for the bombing purely to justify a budget increase.
You're telling me that you're gonna fake some terrorist thing just to scare some money out of Congress?
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Hennessy, I have no idea how to fake killing 4,000 people. So we're just gonna have to do it for real. Oh, blame it on the Muslims, naturally. Then I get my funding. Good night, old girl. Timothy, I'll be in Chopper 1.
I'm gonna die, I wanna know.
Okay. Chemical bomb. Chain reaction. Once started, it can't be stopped. The catalyst injected into the tanker heats up. We pull the truck into the center of town. It goes critical around midnight. Farewell. Adieu.